Hi, I'm Harold Bell, and this is the Legends of Inside Sports and the Way We Were. This is my Christmas story. The holidays are fast approaching, and many of you will find a way to participate in giving something back in the holiday spirit. There are some of you who have carried the holiday spirit with you for 365 days of the year. And then there are others who wait for the moment, lights, and cameras. 2017 will mark the 49th anniversary of my first Christmas toy party, sponsored by my nonprofit organization, Kids in Trouble, in 1968. Thousands of children in the district, Maryland, and Virginia have benefited from the Kids in Trouble toy party. Since that time, the NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, and the National Hockey League have all followed my wife Hattie and my lead into the community. This thought brought me to a story written in a Chicago newspaper in 1988 about the joy of giving. Patterson was Muhammad Ali's chief of security, and he was being interviewed about Ali's fight with Parkinson's disease. During the interview, Pat was volunteering as a crossing guard for school children in his Chicago neighborhood. He remembered seeing Ali at his brightest and darkest moments, and he said he felt blessed. He said, "I am a better person for having been around him. He was kind, sweet, and he taught me how to treat people and helped make me a decent human being. He showed me that the joy of living was giving and not receiving. It is why I enjoyed going to work." Ali was the king. He's got nothing to feel sorry about. He lived like few others, and I was there to share it with him. Pat closed by saying, "I have been to the mountaintop with Muhammad Ali." Pat Patterson died in 2001 in Chicago. I have broken bread with some great men in my lifetime, but none greater than Muhammad Ali as a human being and as an athlete. How many of us can say we've been to the mountaintop with Muhammad Ali? I have been there and done that. It is often said a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, look behind me, and you can see Pat standing behind Muhammad Ali and Harold Bell while we sit on the mountaintop in the Poconos. The list of media personalities who came through Kids in Trouble and Inside Sports before their 15 minutes of fame reads like a who's who. Some are your heroes and role models who think they made it by themselves. Some are legends in their own time, and others are legends in their own mind. And some have gone on to fortune and halls of fame, but none of them have ever sat on the mountain with Muhammad Ali. I have no regrets. Disappointments, yes, but no regrets. Muhammad Ali got it right when he said, "The service you do for others is the rent that you pay for your room here on earth." My relationship and walk with some of the greatest and the greatest was priceless. We are so vain. We love to be seen and heard on radio and television saying, "Look, I'm giving something back." Ask yourself, where have I been all year? The poor and downtrodden don't just start hurting in November and December. Our problem, we're looking for love in all the wrong places, and some of us are using God as a crutch. They are what I call the great pretenders. Many think they can buy and lie their way into heaven. You may be fooling yourself, but you're not fooling God. This brings me to December 2016. My wife Hattie and I were sitting around the table discussing life and the presidency of Donald Trump during a Christmas party. One man, a brother with a PhD from Harvard and a CEO in corporate America, decided to explain the problem with teachers and youth advocates. Evidently, he decided we were the problem. He said, "What's a kid going to learn from someone who decided his best option in life was to become a teacher or advocate for children?" He reminded us what they say about teachers: those who can do, and those who can't teach. To emphasize his point, he looked at me and said, "Harold, you are a community activist and youth advocate. Be honest, what do you make?" Now, my reputation for honesty and calling it like I see them is well known. I replied, "You want to know what I make? Well, first, I went where there was no path in community involvement in sports talk radio, and I left a trail for the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, and National Hockey League to follow. I make kids believe they can sit on the mountaintop with Muhammad Ali and have lunch with the president at the White House. I make kids excel in the classroom when they thought they could not. I make them believe they are the best when they take the field in athletics. I make a C-plus student feel like they just won the Congressional Medal of Honor and an A and B is just around the corner. I teach kids sportsmanship and make them respect each other. And losing a game is not the end of the world. There will always be another game the next day, the next week, or the next year. I make a young athlete understand that the most important game being played in the world today is not football, basketball, or baseball. It's the game called life. And black lives do matter. I make kids understand that every black face they see is not their brother, and every white face they see is not their enemy. I make them do 100 setups and 100 jumping jacks when they don't follow the rules. I make kids believe their heroes are not athletes and entertainers, their heroes are their parents and teachers. I make pulling a 15-year-old autistic girl off the subway tracks in Southeast DC with a train approaching look routine. I make a young man like Lonnie Taylor growing up in the inner city believe he could become the first black chief of staff for a white congressman on Capitol Hill. I make a broke and penniless Sugar Ray Leonard believe he could become a world champion and the first pro boxer to make $100 million in prize money in the history of the sport. I make radio and TV one owners Kathy Hughes and her son Alfred believe they can be all that they can be. I make New York Times best-selling author Omar Tyree remember where he came from and he didn't make it by himself. I use Inside Sports to help make Georgetown basketball coach John Thompson Jr. the first black to win an NCAA Division I championship. I guided Doug Williams in the community as he guided the Washington Redskins to the Super Bowl in 1988, making him the first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl and Most Valuable Player. I made it possible to get NFL great Jim Brown an early release from jail in 2007 for a bogus domestic violence charge. I led a letter writing campaign that made it possible to get DC basketball legend JoJo Hunter released from jail after he had served 18 years for armed robbery. When the NFL and NBA forgot the pioneering efforts of the great Willie Wood and Earl Lord, I made them remember. Willie and Earl were inducted into the NFL and NBA Hall of Fame in 1989 and 2003, respectively. I make kids believe that the most important Hall of Fame is God's. I close by saying when people like you try to judge me by what I make, knowing money isn't everything, I can hold my head up high and overlook your ignorance because it's people like you who are holding our community back. You want to know what I make, Mr. CEO? Well, I suddenly remembered, who I was talking to, but I asked him, "Mr. CEO, what do you make?" Well, he suddenly remembered he was late for another engagement and disappeared out the back door. Well, my freshman year at Winston-Salem State in 1960, I was complaining about how unfair life was during football practice, and my coach overheard me. Well, I was really talking about him. And he came over and he said, Harold, there is nothing wrong with this life. This is a beautiful life. The problem is the people in it. The coach was the legendary Clarence Big House Gaines. It was also a lesson learned. I also learned from Muhammad Ali. He taught me if you have common sense, street sense, book sense, you can also be undefeated in the game called life. Well, that's going to be it for this segment of the Legends of Inside Sports and the Way We Were. But I want you to remember that every black face that you see is not your brother, and every white face is not your enemy. Until next time, you can color me gone, and Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.